Hi everybody, this is Glòria from TU Dublin GROWTHhub, and today we have Oisín Lennon from Danu Sports. Oisín is a founder of Danu Sports, and welcome today here with us.
Yeah, delighted to be here. Thanks for having me.
No problem, no problem. Oisín is a former student of TU Dublin, so tell us your journey from when you finished college to where you are now, and maybe why you went into business.
Yeah, okay. I suppose it probably should start with college as well, because TUD actually had a sort of part to play in the business as well. So I started off, I did product design in TUD here, or DIT as it was back then. And the whole idea of doing that product design course was actually, it wasn't because I actually wanted to come out of it as a designer as such. If I did, I'd be happy out doing that. But I always liked the idea of the course where you're building a product, like a nice physical product, but then you're also learning about the business side and the engineering side, manufacturing, everything that sort of goes into a product and selling that product. So I like the idea of, you know, coming out of it with maybe a business idea, and then in final year of that product design course, you have a thesis project, which is essentially develop an idea. So go through the whole design process, research a problem, find a solution to the problem, brainstorm with your colleagues to see which solution makes sense, and in that process, you know, as someone always loves sports, like most things, I'm generally good at everything I do but never great at anything, and like rugby's one of those things as well. So like I got to, you know, I started rugby late at 17, but I still got the chance to play in, say, New Zealand for a couple of years and Hong Kong for half a year. As part of the course we got to do an Erasmus there, but in that whole process I got to see a lot of very talented athletes who, you know, once you don't get into that early sort of pathway system of academies and so on, you miss out on some of the crucial things that help you become a success, like the analysis, the rehab if you get injured, top quality clinicians looking after you, even just the prehab, that actually getting ready for a training session, that sort of thing. So and you could be someone that's a late bloomer. Some people aren't like really good at their sports till they're 21 or 22, but once you're not in the system, you kind of miss it, and there's this growing disparity between amateur athletes and professional athletes, which is great. It's great to see how far professionalism has gone, but for my thesis I wanted to develop or take an element of that professional analysis and turn it into something that's more accessible across the whole range of sporting environments. Now ironically we're looking to sell to professional athletes at the moment, but the idea is that we start there and we work our way down to make it something that everyone can use. So that's where the whole, I suppose, smart sock system comes out. You know, I know people think socks as an idea it's silly, but it's not really. So what we're trying to do is take what's essentially lab-based analysis, which is what every sports team uses. They use motion capture systems, force plates, which are these meter square platforms on the ground, to do your jump analysis or plyometrics on, big instrumented treadmills, all this equipment that's really accurate in their measurements, which is why people use them. But it's inaccurate in that the way that you move on nearly all this equipment, sometimes it's not conducive to your natural movement form. Even, you know yourself, when you're running on a treadmill, it's not the same as when you're running on the grass. The grass is not the same as when you're running on a track or on the road, sort of thing. If you're forcing yourself to do a jump in a very confined platform, you're not moving in a natural way. So we're trying to provide a wearable that gives you the same levels of accuracy, if not close to the same levels of accuracy. We'll never be able to do the exact same levels of accuracy as this equipment, but we'll get very close to it. But then add in increased practicality for clinicians and athletes, lots of time saving, really in-depth analysis across a broad spectrum of activities, rather than just confined to you do this activity on this device and this activity on that device. It's all done in the same device or the same ecosystem of devices that we're building. Now it wasn't as advanced as that finishing TUD, but this is probably a long-winded version of the story, but essentially I came out with this sort of smart sock idea for sports in general, for giving gait analysis in sports environments, in anywhere, anytime, I suppose. And then I started off as a medical device designer within a medical startup based in the Synergy Centre in TU Dublin. And one of the main directors of that company, a lady called Oisín Lennon, who I think is another TUD graduate, very good entrepreneur, excellent entrepreneur, most intelligent woman I've ever met. She encouraged me to pursue this as a business idea as well. So I did like the New Frontiers programs while I was working with them, and sort of built it out from something that was, kind of finished college as a nice concept project to a very sort of credible business opportunity. And there's another guy, David Chapman, who works in Connexcom Medical. He's the director of finance, and he's the guy I used to take my initial business plans to him and say, what do you think of this? And he'd say blah blah, I'd tear it up and throw it in a bin. But like in a very like, not in a way like to ruin your confidence. He's just like, this isn't good enough, but he knows you can do better, and he'd help you sort of learn what's wrong and fix it up. So over the course of the 4 years with them, I was doing this as a side project, through various programs, getting grants here or there, like a few bits of awards, but just enough money coming in that we could continue developing the product. And eventually, November 2020, we got our first sort of significant investment round, and that was off the back of, I suppose, all those grants and all that money coming in. All the money went into the product and turning into like a nice proper proof of concept, and then accompanied by a credible business plan and nice pitch deck and everything, and we got 600 grand investment then. Used that to employ myself and employ one other guy, a sports scientist, and then we sort of built the business a bit further. The sports scientist added a lot of like sort of detail that I'm not an expert in. He's really knows the science behind the product. Then we got in the following year we got a professional coach, I suppose, like a guy who he coached Glasgow Warriors, Bristol Bears, like he's a top end strength and conditioning coach, and he came onto the team, and he kind of helps us build a product to his spec. He's the customer at the end of the day. So he was excellent, helping us build the product out, like from in terms of the hardware is the hardware, but then you've got the software behind it, the app behind it, the analysis, and how does that all look, and how does it all flow, and how does that make his life easier, while not sacrificing the detail that he wants to see. And then again that November we got our second round of funding, which was 465k, which we used then to hire 2 more people, and that part of that 465k was there was 300,000 from our new investors who essentially wanted to see what we could do with it. They gave us, we worked out a trial, it's a lot of money for a trial, right? It's a huge amount of money to us at the time, but to them maybe it wasn't as much. They liked what we're doing. Worked well with myself. I was always very honest with them, and they liked that, and they liked the proposition. So as throughout, like, I suppose just less than a year, we're ticking off all the milestones that they'd like to see, and probably going a bit further as well. Some of them we probably couldn't do, but we always had a very valid reason why we couldn't do it. There's a lot of R&D involved, so there's naturally delays. Of course, but they then followed up, I suppose, July of last year, we agreed to raise 3 million with them as well. So, and it was like a very I wouldn't say informal process at the start, but they just kind of sat you down, compared to like say raising the 600k early on, where they you go through all these 3-minute pitches or 15-minute pitches and Q&As, and you're grabbing little bits of chunks of change off different individuals. I think there was about 15 people involved in that first round of funding. Well, with these guys, they sat me down, just 2 of them, and asked what does a company really need? You know, I was asking for probably less money than what we got, and they're like, well, you know, that's only going to get you so far. What do you really need? And if you just spend a bit more, what does that look like? You know, who do you need to get into the team? How do you really push this forward? So that like, within 2 years, if you had €3 million, where would the company be in 2 years? And how much value would you have generated in the company, and what could you do with it at that point? And at the same time, and look after yourself, you know. So from an equity perspective and everything, you know, look after, you know, what's the best for me as the entrepreneur as much as the business. You know, the best thing is for the business to have money to survive and stuff, but it's, you know, you don't want to be giving away too much of your company at the same time. But yeah, so off the back of that, you know, came out of a very relaxed meeting, you know, really back of a piece of paper sort of thing, what we need, and a sort of verbal agreement from there. And then I suppose what followed then is the harder part, which is
the legal.
Yeah. So like, you know,
the paperwork.
You've got a great relationship with your investors, but then there's 2 legal teams working on it. The due diligence was heavy enough, but you know, we sort of passed through that quite early on. We did everything good, but then it was just because there's 2 million of equity and there's $1 million of a loan, which the idea is that it converts into equity later on when the company's at a better value, but it does add to complexity. So the legal process, it was long. It was about 8 months before we got the actual funding in the door, which is longer than we anticipate. So like, you know, a lot of tough times in that period sort of thing. But the money, there was always a vision or a sight of the money coming in. So we could always work off that. But and that's where we are now. I suppose we've got some new team members. We're close to 10 now. Be 10 with our new intern next week through TUD, and just looking to grow. So yeah, that's probably.
And how do you find? I was taking notes here because you've answered so many of my questions already.
Sorry.
But for example, one thing, you know, with the design that you're doing with the socks, as well, is gonna prevent injuries. So I would say. So your target is the athletes and then the amateurs, but can you see people like me that have flat feet and keep turning their ankles? Can you see that product working as well? Is that a market that you can see, or you just really focus on what you're trying to achieve and you wonder about that later on in the business?
Yeah, absolutely is the quick answer. I suppose I'll give you another long answer, but like one of the really great things and the beauty of the product is that it does have opportunities across lots of different markets. You know, we're looking at professional sports, but you can drop down then, you know, there's a next level after that they call the prosumers, which is, you know, academy athletes, ambitious amateur athletes, high school athletes. You know, it's a big broader market underneath professional sports. And then you've got the consumer side, which is the end goal really for the company. We're selling to the Glòrias of the world who you know, have a problem and they want to get some data to see if they can improve it. And then, you know, work with their physio with objective data rather than the subjective how I feel data sort of thing. And then, you know, we've got medical side of things, gaming, lots of different avenues.
And how do you find to keep on focus? So you were talking about the milestones, for example, with the investors. But you know the way one can get very excited, or at least I get very excited when you're doing something. You can start seeing opportunities everywhere. How do you keep yourself in line?
Probably had to learn to do that a little bit. You know, I think especially the early stages of last year, we're very guilty of jumping in on, oh, this is a great idea, let's pursue this, and then you forget, you know, your main focus is over here. But I suppose it's a natural thing to do when you've got so many different opportunities. We're kind of spoiled. It's great that we have different opportunities to pursue, but we've had to put like a lot of work into, you know, what the company's really about, you know, what our mission is, what our vision is, and constantly, so whenever we're making a decision, we feed back to some of those sort of statements, you know, like you know, one of the things we want to be customer centric. So is the thing that we're talking about here, is that actually going to benefit the customer, or is it just something really cool? Or, you know, we want to help prevent injuries or help people rehab from injuries. That's our main thing. So don't go drifting over here and doing something else. Even if it's really cool, it's probably something we could look at in the future. But the main thing we need to do, which we have done now, is just so we have to build the product to like a world class sort of level. So and that's probably what makes it really hard for us. So we've got, if you're thinking of professional sports as the main market that we're focused on, you know, we've got really technologically advanced hardware that we're building. That's all bespoke. Everything. There's nothing off the shelf. So every element of it has gone through
brand new.
Tough R&D.
Yeah.
And then you figure out like getting Bluetooth connections, and even the small thing of when you're connecting to your two socks, that the data coming from them is synchronized. So you're not, you know, it's not collecting data here, and it looks like
1 second difference between the two
exactly.
of them.
So that's all stuff you don't think about, right? But then you find it as a problem and you have to fix it. And then you get all that data, and so we've got an app that is the main data collection tool, and so you get live analysis from that. It's complex in itself, but we've made it so that it's a really simple flow for people to just run through their exercises and chop and change between athletes really easily. Then that all feeds into our web platform that we've built as well, which is like our main analysis tool, and that's all designed specifically for those coaches and physios. Where they can go into as much detail as they want on an athlete or a team of athletes, but in a way that's really easy for them to use, but again not sacrificing on the detail that they want. And then behind all that, you've got a customer who demands validity and accuracy, or validity of your accuracy. So we're saying our product says X, they want to see through research and publications that
prove it to me,
and don't just prove it in your office, you know, with 3 people jumping around the place. Get someone to do it independently. So we do a lot of research collaborations to sort of get that done, and the proof's in the pudding, and that, you know, the results of those reports and those publications is really strong. So the product does what it says it does, but we have to wait for all that to happen before we could stand behind the product and say to a customer, you know, this is it. You can use it, and you know, it's not like your standard. I think there's a lot of how do I describe it? I suppose in a lot of these sort of entrepreneurial camps and programs that I've done, there's like a model that they sort of push towards you, and it's kind of, you know, it's that sort of lean model where you build your MVP, get it out quick, and get the feedback, and then make it better. And it's a brilliant model for 95% of businesses, but like every business is different.
If you take it out, it's not working, they're not gonna try it again.
They'll throw it in the bin and they'll shut the door and they won't let us back. So, you know, they're like really they're like, they demand top quality,
of course,
demand validity behind it, and I get why they do, because if you're selling to a coach or a physio and they're getting their athletes to use it, their reputation's at stake as well, and they want to know, you know, if you're testing an athlete who's on whatever 100 grand a week, you want to know that what you're measuring on that athlete is accurate, you know. So, but that just meant that we couldn't do that nice process of building a simple product and getting it out and getting their feedback, because they just don't work that way, I suppose. So it's been a bit of a longer route to market for us.
And back to the motivation piece. So you were saying earlier, when the financial controller took your business plan and shared it. How do you find dealing with those step backs? So you've done a draft of something that you're obviously satisfied, or you're happy as a first draft, or if you go and do one of those tests and you think, no, I got it totally right, and then you realize you might not have got it totally right, like the example of the business plan. The business plan is so painful anyway. So, you know, how do you deal with that? How do you keep motivated? You know, like you could say, no, I'm done, that's it, I'm giving up. How do you keep that motivation going?
I love that, to be honest.
You love when somebody says this is not working, is it?
Well, like as long as they do it in a way that's respectful, you know. His intentions are right, so I don't really mind. Like, I love criticism. Like, so whenever we're doing anything, we're doing a trial, I don't want people to give you like the Irish no, where there's this is great, you know, and then they don't call you back the next day, sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to hear.
You want to hear
what's
the
wrong.
learnings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
What did I do bad? Like, if I did something great, by all means say it. That's nice, but I want to hear what's bad so I can fix the bad things.
Yeah.
Because if you're just glossing over the bad things, it doesn't really improve what you're doing.
Yeah.
So when he tore it to shreds, and he tore it to shreds 4 or 5 times, it was because it wasn't good enough. And if he just said that's great, well done, I would have brought it to investors, and the investors would have torn me to shreds in a forum, where there's 20 of them talking to you. So it helps. I'm also really competitive in myself. I don't think I'm ever happy with myself. So I just like to try and.
So that's your
find ways to
motivation.
improve.
That's your drive. Yeah. And I presume as well having a super clear vision, because you're very clear of what you want to do since college.
Yeah.
That I presume that helps as well, because you know where you're going.
Definitely a clear vision of, I suppose, where I'm going and where it's about the company, right? So where the company's going and where the company has an opportunity to go.
Yeah.
So again, like going back to that difficult thing of us not being able to base our investment proposition off sales because we couldn't get sales, I had to give a very clear vision of what happens to get to sales and what those sales look like once we're making sales. What's the opportunity from there, sort of thing. So so it's a different proposition, I suppose, than some businesses.
Indeed. And another question I wanted to talk to you was about teams, and you've covered a lot because you've already told me that you grow your team to 10, that you got experts to help you, to be part of the company, from a research, from a customer. But when did you know, I'm on my own, there's no point to be on my own anymore, it's time now to go out there and look for the experts and invest here with other people? And how did you find that running the show by yourself, where you manage everything yourself, to have to start having people around?
I wouldn't say I've got it right yet. I'd say I still find that difficult. And I suppose because it was a thesis on my own, the whole thing was on my own for a long time. Again, that competitive side of me, I want to be an expert in everything that we're doing, but I know I'm not. So, So doing it on your own is definitely difficult, but I suppose what I focused on in the early stages, and again, a lot of those programs, they're really encouraging me to get co-founders. But to me, if I got a co-founder, that's money taken away from the product, and I need the product to get the investment. I don't need a team, because I know once I have the product, I can build a team. And whether I was right or wrong in that approach is maybe it's up for debate, but I think I was right because it's worked out well so far. So I really wanted to just make it a really top class product, top class prototype. So every bit of money that came in, whether it was a grant or an award, you get $5,000 here or there. We got some nice, great support from the European Space Agency Business Incubator. That was $50,000, and that's one of those motivators. When you're really down, you get a lot of rejections, and then you get a really credible partner giving you support, and both financial and business support. That's where you're back up here, and you're like, okay, this is great. But once we got the investment, I knew we needed more people involved. There's still always been a lot of R&D costs, so I couldn't just go in and hire 5 people straight away. So I kind of think of where's the crucial need for, where's the gap, I suppose, in expertise. So say that first round, back in 2020, what I did on my own, knowing that I had to put all the money into the product, is I got really strong technical partners. So rather than me employing 5 people to build a product, I would employ consultancy. So I work a lot with design partners out in Bray, who have been one of the best technical partners I could have joined with, because with them came great industrial designers, fabric engineers, mechanical engineers, electronic engineers, and then just a real great view of design that sort of aligns with my values for it as well. You know, I want this product to be, it's a pair of socks, but I want it to look great. You know, I want it to work great and be really unobtrusive to the clients and stuff. And they were the perfect people for that. You know, they've really helped to take it from a nice-ish design to something really.
And
really
it was
cool.
great you were able to get that quality of expertise in Ireland, because sometimes you'll hear a lot people have to go outside home, and it's lovely when you can, you can just ring them or drop the line, or that it's all together here.
Yeah, no, 100%, and like they're not they're not cheap. It's definitely expense working with consultants, but in general you get value back for these sort of things. I think for me, I think a lot of companies miss the boat when it comes to appreciating good design as well. Because I think design sells on its own in a way, and you should invest in making something user friendly and beautiful and nice and everything. And ergonomic. But I suppose going back to your original question, so I had expertise on the hardware side with design partners. I had expertise on the software side at the time with one of our investors has an IT solutions app development, software development company. They were working with us on that side. The main gap was the actual sports side, so sports science, biomechanics, professional sports individuals, that sort of thing. So we got them in, and then the plan is that we keep the hardware outsourced and we'd slowly bring all the software and the data development in-house. That's what we should really own. So then we got the data scientist in and software developer, that covers all the ranges. And then even this year, all our new employees, they're all, iOS developers or front-end developers. They're all software tech heads, so we brought that all in-house, and we kept the relationship with design partners there. And even so at the moment it's me with them, and we're doing our first manufacturing run of the product, and there's a sort of three-way thing where we're liaising with all the new suppliers and manufacturers in that sense.
So another question I had for you is the future plans. So you've already covered, but tell us, when are you launching?
I don't have an official date, unfortunately.
When do you think you might be launching?
Well, I suppose the best, we're taking it out of our control now, where we're giving the product to customers. Not necessarily paying customers, all of them. We've got some really, one of the great things we've had, we've built this amazing pipeline of potential customers. Loads of people really interested in the product, and that's great for us. That motivates us as well. Because we see, whether it's a Premier League team or whoever it is, Olympian, they see benefit in the product and they want to use it, and it's been on us. We haven't wanted to give it to them because it hasn't been ready. So we're at a point now, we're going to have our first sort of batch of commercial units made mid-July. Got demos going on at the moment, and we're just signing up to some pilots, proper pilots with the sort of top end customers we can start in September. And then full sales cycle starts next year.
I would say it feels amazing that you can now almost touch it, isn't it? Like it's been a long process.
Even last year it was very frustrating. We had so many potential customers that wanted to use the product, and so many times we'd think we're there and something new would come up, and it's this huge setback, and it'd take 2 or 3 months to fix, and we were actually having to reject people that wanted to use it rather than them rejecting us. So that's been very frustrating, and that's required a lot of patience, I suppose, from a whole team perspective. That you see a top client wants to use the product, naturally you just want to jump at it and say yes, but we've sort of held back and easy.
So I would say one of the questions I want to ask you is one piece of advice you'll give yourself when you were in college doing that project. I have an idea of what you might say, but I'll let you answer first. I'll write it here.
I'd like to hear what you think my answer would be. Back when I was in college.
Yeah, you were just doing the project and you were thinking, gosh, would I go to business? And when you realised that you were going to business, what would be the advice you'll give yourself? Looking back, with all the information you've learned.
Things I've done wrong, sort of thing? Or
the type, like if you saw yourself for a second back in that time, and
Yeah.
something that you might, like one case could be, for example, some people are afraid to do things, so you might say, well, go for it, do it, and other
Yeah.
people will say, well, it's gonna be fast, really fast, and saying to yourself, well, maybe it's not that fast. That type of information that you wish you would have known when you were still in college and you had no commitments whatsoever, or limited commitments.
Yeah, I'd say it depends on the business. Again, you know, some businesses you can have an idea and it can grow rapidly straight away, right?
Yeah,
you can start selling
yeah.
it within a few months, and that's particularly relevant to maybe software related companies, right? But I think hardware is very hard, is what we've discovered, you know, and it's a very slow, patient process to get it right.
Yeah.
Again, not for everyone, you know. Sometimes you can take an off the shelf product and do something new with it, and you've got a business ready to go. But I think if I was to look back and tell myself something, I'd say it's going to take an awful long time, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe let my wife know that it's going to take longer than we think. She's been very patient and supportive, in fairness. You know? And she's had to buy into the vision, you know, because we're doing this as an opportunity for the family as well.
Yeah.
But it's a slow burner. But I'd say if I was to give advice, that's probably the main thing I'd say to myself, is just realize how much work is actually involved in it, you know.
Yeah, and to be patient.
Be patient, yeah.
I had it written. Patient. No, that's perfect. And then the last question, Oisín, is for those students that are watching and they're thinking, they might have a business idea or not, or they might think, God, is this for me? Or I want to start my business. What would be, if you had to give them 3 tips, what those tips would be?
I'd say, well, the patience was one of them, but it's always be open to advice, I suppose, is one thing. So one thing I'm very aware of is everything I do in the business is new to me. So, you know, we're drafting these contracts with customers at the moment, or even partners. Never done it before, so I'm looking for advice from wherever I can get it, because there's lots of people out there that have done it before. And you know, maybe you don't want to sit down and talk to an old guy and listen to his advice for 2 hours, but it's worth it, you know, because if you come out with 2 minutes of those 2 hours of advice that actually helps you, brilliant, you know. You've learned something, because it's part of that patience. You really need to just learn to listen to people, take their advice, and you don't always, you don't take their advice, you listen to their advice, and then you make sense of it in your own way. Someone's telling you to do this, okay, maybe doing it that way doesn't make sense to me, or doesn't make sense to the business, but I'll take little snippets of it and we'll do it this way instead, sort of thing. So I think be really respectful and take advice from wherever it comes is one. The power of relationships is a huge one for me, and the reason the company's still afloat now is because of the relationships we built along the way. So again, you know, always being really respectful and polite and professional when you're dealing with people, and having a bit of crack at the same time, you know. So it doesn't matter whether it's a supplier, a customer, an interviewee, a business partner, you know. I've always put a huge amount of work into making that relationship really positive. And on the back of that, you know, I'd proudly say that everyone that we work with, they love working with us at the same time. And they, you know, we've got a really nice team, and everyone works really well with everyone that's involved. But when you need it, so, you know, in that 8 months process of getting the money from handshake to bank account, you know, we ran out of money 4 or 5 times, you know.
Wow.
And that meant, but we've got all these suppliers that are working for us, and rather than them shutting up shop and saying, we're not working with you till you pay your invoices, you know, they worked with us. They're like, okay, you've promised us that this money's coming in, we're going to hold you to your word. We've got like goodwill and good faith together, and we all like each other. We'll make it work, you know, and you can pay us when you get the money, you know.
Wow, incredible to have that relationship
so
early.
So early, and if it wasn't for that, then we'd be 6 months back where it's waiting to develop things, you know. That was a really good support, and it's been the case for everything, you know. The main supplier, you know, we've got a really good relationship with them, and they're helping us build a product and doing things for less cost and everything. You know, I think relationships is a big one. And that doesn't mean going to every networking event. I avoid networking to be honest. I know it's very beneficial, but I don't know where people get the time to do it all the time. So I think, you know, sort of selective relationships. And third piece of advice, I suppose, is really enjoy the peaks when they come in. You know, there's a lot of you know, it's probably like a repetitive bit of advice everyone says. You know, it's like a wave in the ocean, right?
Roller coaster as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. It's probably roller coaster is more like more accurate, because
you're only there for a second.
There's a lot of down, right? But you get hit by so many negatives. You know, rejections, doors closing, even small things like, you know, people that you'd have respect for, and then, you know, they don't live up to it or something, or, you know, people saying, it's something that a lot of people ideas will get, you know, especially at the early stage, people saying, oh, someone's already done that.
I know I hate that one myself too. But they got it their style. Can I do it my style?
Exactly. You know, you don't really understand what I'm trying to say here. You know, this, you know, you've got a unique proposition, you know, and sometimes they might be right, but like not all the time, you know. Don't shut people off before you understand what they're actually doing. So when something good happens, I think really enjoy it. And that doesn't mean going on the lash every time you get you know, a pat in the back. Just that's your, again, go back to your motivation, you know. So in those early days, you know, there was times where I was like, this isn't working, you know, with no money, I'm on my own. And then, you know, a future customer would be like, you know, I love this, you know, this is great. And you'd be like, oh, okay, that's the reason I'm doing this, you know, because these people want to use it. You know, this is why we stick to it. Or, you know, you get a small award or a grant, you know, even the small things, you know, you just really have to take that in as your motivation to keep going, because there'll be a lot of dark times in between it all.
Well, those are three fabulous advice. So respect, relationships, and enjoy the highs, enjoy the bigs, the winnings. So that, Oisín, I'm so grateful for all the information, all your tips and trips and sharing your story. It's been great from my side, and
well, I hope
thank you so much.
I hope it's useful to somebody. Anyway, sorry if I was waffling for the majority of the
You are not waffling.
I've never done something like this before, so it's nice to get it off.
Well, we can do it again when you launch and have a shorter version of the next stage of Danu Sports, if you like. We'd love to have you back.
Great.
Excellent.